Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh with another edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my video legislative report to my constituents, and this edition is for the week of April 10th. Let's talk first about a bill that went out the Senate in final read, which means it's on its way up to the governor for either signature or veto. That bill is SB 1021, Attorney General Legislative Legal Challenges. Last year, I had a bill passed and signed into law that would keep people at least 10 feet away if they're videotaping with their cell phones police officers engaged in potentially dangerous or actually dangerous encounters with citizens. Again, that was passed into law, but it was challenged by the ACLU, and a federal judge put an injunction on it to stop it, claiming it was a First Amendment violation. Then Attorney General Brnovich refused to defend it, and that was the genesis of this particular bill. So what I did was this year ran a bill that said the Attorney General has to defend our cases in such courts. However, there were issues with our own lawyers about that, and I had to change it. So the current version of the bill is that the Attorney General, if he or she decides not to defend a bill that is challenged in court, a bill that was passed into law that's challenged in court, has to give the legislature 10 days notice before they tell the court that, which would give us time to locate our own attorney to defend our own bill. All right, let's talk about some of the bills that the governor vetoed of mine. The governor's been doing a lot of vetoes. She's on target to actually beat former Democrat Governor Janet Napolitano. The first one she vetoed was SB 1005, Unjustified Actions Parental Rights. Arizona currently has in statute a Parents' Bill of Rights, which gives parents the right to have a certain amount of direction over their children's K-12 education and also to be informed about things involved in that. The current law says that parents can enforce that right if they think that schools are doing the wrong thing towards their children or hiding things by suing the school in court. Under the current law, if they sue in court and they don't win, which simply means that they only had 49% of the arguments in their favor, but the school had 51 because it's a civil case, the parents would be liable to pay all of the legal expenses for the school district, which could amount to tens of thousands of dollars. My bill changes that and says that they only have to do that if, in fact, a judge rules that the lawsuit was frivolous. Unfortunately, the governor basically vetoed that bill. The second bill that the governor vetoed was SB 1009, Criminal Damage Monuments. Several years ago, many of us were shocked as news reports all around the country showed mobs of people toppling statues of historic figures whom they didn't like. Well, my bill enhances the penalty for people who would destroy monuments and memorials because they're more than just a stone or a rock. They're the expression of the people who put them up, usually the government, that these individuals should be honored. If people don't think that they should be standing, then there's a democratic way to do that by going to the elected officials who control that jurisdiction and asking them to remove it. Unfortunately, the governor apparently disagreed. However, the governor did sign one of my bills, SB 1270, Open Meetings Capacity. 2 years ago, I went to a Scottsdale school board meeting along with many irate parents to protest unreasonable mask mandates in the school, COVID mask wearing mandates in the school. I got there a half an hour before the meeting was due to start and was told that the room was already full. That's because of two reasons. First, they allowed people to come in very early, an hour early, which is unusual, and the room they chose was very small, even though that school had a large auditorium that could have accommodated everybody. So this bill simply states that if a school, or any government agency for that matter, a town council, city council, if they believe that they're going to have a large attendance because of some controversial issue, and if they have available such a room, they have to move it to a larger room. And in all cases, they have to say not only when the meeting starts, but when the doors open. So people who favor one issue or another can't pack the meeting by telling their people to get there early. Let's move on to the update on the budget. I am the Senate Appropriations Chair, so I do have a key role in the construction of the budget. The budget started off on a rocky course this session. The Republicans not wanting to have a government shutdown if we couldn't agree on a budget, and we thought that possibility was larger than normal because we now have a Democrat governor and a Republican-led legislature. We said, let's pass the continuing budget, the monies that will keep government going after June 30th if we don't sign a budget. And then we can negotiate after we did that continuing budget about how to spend the $1.6 billion in extra one-time revenue we have. The governor disagreed, so we had a lot of controversy over that. We then began putting together a Republican legislative budget, while at the same time leaving a fair share of that extra money for the governor and the Democrats to spend. We very quickly got a consensus among our Republican representatives and senators, and we got our share of that budget done. We approached the legislative Democrats in the House and the Senate. We said, please fill in your wants. You have X amount of dollars. But they never got back to us, and they delayed. And they eventually said we couldn't do it till the middle of April, which is unacceptable. So we went directly to the governor and said, hey, we're willing to give you a fair share of the budget. You can deal with your Democrats. You can appropriate it as you will. Just don't do anything that's toxic to us, like funding abortion clinics, and we won't do anything that's toxic to you. And I'm pleased to say that the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the governor have been engaged in ongoing person-to-person talks. And they may be getting close to having a deal where the Democrats have their picks and we already have ours and we have a budget. So hopefully that'll work out. Finally, the Rio Verde foothills water problem is still amongst us. To recap very briefly, Scottsdale shut off the standpipe water that they had been giving to that community for years. It was delivered by a standpipe from Scottsdale that tanker trucks filled and drove to people in Rio Verde who did not have wells, who had wells that ran dry, by tanker trucks to big underground tanks in their homes. Scottsdale cut that off at the beginning of the year, and ever since then, myself and my seatmate, Representative Kavanagh, have been trying to get a deal brokered between Scottsdale and these people. It's been a long, twisting journey. We eventually got to the point where Scottsdale agreed that they would still provide water temporarily until the permanent solution that the EPCOR Water Company is going to provide to them in 2.5 years comes to fruition. However, Scottsdale wanted certain concessions. The big one was they didn't want to deal directly with the EPCOR Water Company. They wanted a government intermediary to deal with. We first tried to get the county to do that. The Rio Verde foothills is a county island, so they have no city or town. They aren't in a city or town, making the county their lowest level government. And sadly, the county said it's not our job, which was quite frankly disgraceful in my mind. We then tried to get the state to do it, Department of Water Resources, Department of Administration. We eventually asked the governor, and she said they weren't going to intercede, just to sign this contract between the two parties. So now we're trying to run a bill to do that, and unfortunately, the Democrat legislators are refusing to cooperate unless we get significant other water reforms initiated. We're trying to get some water reforms initiated that deal with statewide issues, but quite frankly, we haven't been able to get significant water reforms, which I support, passed for decades. Even as the Colorado River is drying up and our share is being reduced, we haven't been able to get meaningful reform. So it's really unfair of the Democrats to think that these 650 poor souls in the Rio Verde foothills without water are going to be the impetus to get major reform. We'll continue to try to get the reform put into place, and I'm hopeful that we can, because these people do need water, and there's no reason. The water is there. There's no reason not to give it to them. So myself and Representative Kavanagh will continue on this quest, and well, stay tuned for the next issue of Kavanagh's Corner for an update. Thanks for watching.